I'm Gabriela Resta Montero. I'm the managing editor here at Rocky Mountain PBS, and this is Dr. Temple Grandin. Dr. Temple Grandin is a professor of animal science at Colorado State University, where her research on the humane treatment of livestock has changed the way that farming is practiced. In 1986, she became one of the few public figures in the United States to disclose that she has autism in her book, Emergence, labeled autistic. Since then, Dr. Grandin has become an advocate for autism understanding, as well as animal welfare. Her life and work are the focus of a new documentary, An Open Door. Welcome,
It's
Temple
great
Grandin.
to be here.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's wonderful to be here.
Well, just to get started, for those of us who may not have seen the documentary yet, can you tell us a little bit about what it's about and what chapter of your life it's covering?
Well, it covers a lot of my teaching at Colorado State University.
Great.
And I've been at Colorado State University for 34 years, and I think teaching is really important. And I like to emphasize the importance of hands-on things. I think one big mistake that a lot of schools have done is taking out hands-on learning. I mean, one thing that CSU has been trying to do is put hands-on learning back in,
Yeah.
but we also need to be doing hands-on learning with younger kids.
I did see that your latest book, I believe it's called
Visual thinking.
Yes, visual thinking. You talk a lot about how children, and also children who are neurodivergent, learn. And so is this something that you are kind of addressing in the film and with
Well, this is
kids?
something I'm really working on right now. There's kind of three ways that people can think. Object visualizers like me, where everything is like a photographic picture. You know, it's sort of like having Google for images in your mind. And our kinds of minds are really good at mechanical things, fixing things, animals, photography, and art. Then another kind of thinker is the visual spatial thinker. This is your mathematician, your musician. They think patterns. I think in photos. The mathematicians think in patterns. There are actually different kinds of thinking, and there's scientific research that shows that. And then, of course, you have verbal thinkers who think in words. And I've done a lot of talks to businesses, and I said the first step is you have to realize the different kinds of thinking exist. Like, for example, in my situation, I didn't know that other people were verbal thinkers until I was in my late 30s. It was a shock to find that out. But we need the different kinds of thinkers because they bring different kinds of skills into whatever you're working on.
You mentioned that you didn't learn that there were verbal thinkers until your 30s, and so we're always learning new things, especially about the way that people think. Is that something that when you're talking about hands-on learning that you're wanting to see more of?
Well, the
in
visual
classroom?
thinkers are going to really thrive with the hands-on learning. And I'm worried that they're getting screened out of our educational system because they can't do algebra. But I worked with brilliant people that were building beef packing plants who graduated just from high school and then designing entire factories because they can see how mechanical things work. And I worked in heavy construction for 25 years, mainly in the 70s, 80s, and the early 90s. And the visual object visualizers I worked with, they've all retired out. They're not getting replaced. See, in talking to people in the schools, there's a lot of people in the schools pushing algebra because they think you need algebra for logical thinking.
Yeah.
But that's not how I think. I just see how something works. And that helped me with animals because I looked at what animals were seeing. And we're going to need our visual thinkers.
Yes.
Well,
When
you want to have lights on, have water in your building. You're going to need those visual thinkers that are terrible at algebra.
Yes, as someone who is terrible at algebra, I am definitely looking forward to a place where there's more room for people who are thinking in a different way.
And there's certain fields you absolutely need higher math for, absolutely. But the thing I would recommend is instead of making everybody take algebra, how about some geometry? Or how about business math, or accounting, or maybe statistics?
Yeah, I think, are you finding that when you say these things about the way that you were able to learn, the supports that you had when you were able to learn, are parents, teachers being receptive? And do you interact with a lot of kids?
Well, I talk to a lot of parents, I talk to a lot of teachers, and I'm very worried that, I'm seeing veterinary tech students on their third algebra class. Well, I watched them spay cats and dogs over there at the Spur Center, and I don't see what algebra has to do with spaying a kitten. It's very, very meticulous work. Now, there's other things you need algebra for, chemistry, but not spaying a kitten.
Yes.
And I stand in those windows and I watch, and I think, what does algebra have to do with this? It's it's a very delicate skill is what they have to have there.
An experiential skill that you
Yeah,
learn by.
that's right. But I'm worried that you're probably screening out some of the best veterinarians because they can't do algebra. Now, I worked with people that building entire beef plants, and they can't do algebra. They can do arithmetic just fine. And they have a whole bunch of patents. A whole bunch of patents. But what worries me is they're not getting replaced.
I saw that one of the clips from the documentary, you're talking about how you really want to open doors for kids who are different, for kids who think differently.
And we need these skills. We need the skills. So I do a lot of travel.
Yes.
And I'm seeing many, many questionable elevators that I know are not being serviced. Yeah, that'd be a perfect skill for an autistic kid. He's going to love elevators, and he's going to make sure they work. And the other good thing about the hands-on jobs, AI's not going to replace them. That AI's safe.
That's true. You need somebody who knows exactly how elevators work, who can work in there, get in there, service them, design them.
Well, people talk about everything's going to be computerized. Yes, an elevator may be controlled by a computer, but until we get anti-gravity like Star Trek, it's going to be a mechanical device.
That's right. Is that kind of born out from your experience as well, from your educational experience?
Because when I first started out working on my cattle handling stuff, I discovered this whole thing called industrial process equipment. It's all done by the shop people. And sometimes the degreed engineers will go, oh, they just manufacture equipment. No, I worked with people that barely graduated from high school. They were inventing and patenting equipment, and it's still being used in the beef industry today.
Do you think that there's a lot of positive reception to your message?
Well, I think we need to be looking at alternate courses because a lot of equipment we need in the food industry is coming out of Italy, Holland, Denmark, other places. Because in 9th grade, those kids can go university or tech route, and they don't look at the tech route as something lesser.
That's right.
And you know, some teachers say, well, stupid kids take shop. Well, what they don't understand, it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of problem solving. And the first step is you have to realize this different thinking exists. When a kid gets a label, autism, dyslexia, ADHD, they tend to be an extreme object visualizer, like me. Or they might be an extreme mathematician. You can get them both ways. And, you know, a lot of normal people are more mixtures in the middle. But when I was out working on those construction projects, I'm going to estimate that 20% of the people I worked with were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. We need the skills, pure and simple.
So does that happen in the home? Does that happen by changing the way the classrooms function?
Well, yeah, and the other thing is, and I was at the Exceptional Rodeo today, the thing that's a really fun event for kids with various special needs is they're getting those kids out doing things, riding stick horses, riding little seesaw bucking horses, things like that. And it shows parents what their kid can do. Because I'm seeing a lot of kids today get a label. They kind of don't think their kid can do anything. And I've seen autistic kids that were fully verbal where they never went shopping. They never ordered food in a restaurant. The parents are doing it all for them because they don't think their kid can do anything. And one of the most valuable things that probably happened at that special needs rodeo is it shows families what their kid can do. And they were having so much fun. It was just wonderful.
Is that one of your favorite experiences when you're working with kids or when you're meeting kids? You have a lot of children's books that are about your life.
Well, yeah,
I'm sure
I also have 2 kids' project books. They're called Calling All Minds, which is parachute and kite projects that I did as a child. But we've got kids growing up today that have never used a ruler or a tape measure. I had a college student in my class, my livestock handling class, who had never measured anything in her life. I find that just unbelievable.
Yes. I think that would be very hard to be in your class and not know how to do that.
Well, they have to do a scale drawing in my class. And students will ask me, what good is that skill? I said, well, if you ever remodel your house, getting new furniture, it might be a really good idea to measure things.
To just get out there and start experimenting with things.
Well, I would spend hours as a kid tinkering around with little parachutes and things. And kids aren't doing that sort of thing today. In the other book, The Outdoor Scientist, looking at plants, observing animal behavior, looking at the stars, and getting kids out doing things.
I didn't have that hands-on learning at all. So just moving on, I think that you also wrote a book called Autism and Education, the way I see it, that also I would imagine has overlap with this idea about...
Well, and that's aimed especially at parents of a 3-year-old that's newly diagnosed. You know, what do you do?
Right.
There's a lot of controversy about different educational programs, and I just say, well, if you got a 3-year-old talking, what do you want that autistic 3-year-old to do? I want them to talk better, learn how to take turns at games, wait and take turns at games. And the other big thing is skills, things like putting on a coat, eating with utensils, just basic skills, and you should do it in a fun environment where the kid will make progress.
Practical life skills.
Yep, there's not enough emphasis on life skills. Academics is important, but actually I had a really bad time in school. I got kicked out of 9th grade for fighting, throwing a book at a girl who called me a retard.
Oh, wow.
Went to a special boarding school, and they put me to work running a horse barn and cleaning 9 stalls every day. And Mr. Patey, the headmaster, said, let her get through her adolescence. She can make up the academics later. That's what I did. But I learned how to work, because this is the other problem. Kids today are not learning how to work. And it doesn't matter what job it is.
It also sounds like you had good support in your teacher.
Well, I had some very good teachers. My mother always pushing me. She taught me to read when I was 8. Great elementary school teacher. I had a great science teacher who finally got me motivated to study by making that a pathway to a goal.
I see. By making it practical, once again.
Well, then there was a reason for it, because if I wanted to become a scientist, I had to study.
That's right. And your path to becoming a scientist, some of your research was the first of its kind in terms of showing the way that livestock is able to discern shapes, shadows, things like that.
I was one of the first people to look at what cattle were looking at, and it would interfere with their movement through a facility. Also, one of my first graduate students did some of the very first cattle temperament work. This was radical, like 30 years ago,
Right.
to think that cattle that jump around in squeeze chutes and get excited are going to have lower weight gain. They did.
And now when I was doing my research for this interview and I was reading up about this study and the work that you've done, it did strike me that it was radical for its time, but now it's so kind of been accepted.
Totally mainstream now. But back in the early 90s, I wasn't allowed to use the word fear in my papers. I had to call it agitated behavior.
Interesting.
Fear was considered anthropomorphic.
Oh, wow.
Now the word fear is used. Also, they didn't use the word personality to describe animals. I wouldn't have dared done that 30 years ago.
Has it been satisfying then to see that your work has been adapted in this way?
And then on the animal welfare, I developed a very simple auditing system for assessing animal welfare at the meat plants. I designed a lot of equipment that's in the big meat plants. Center track restrainer system, all the big plants have it. I worked on developing that in the 80s and the early 90s.
It's remarkable the impact that your research has had.
Well, people ask me, well, how did I manage to make a difference? Very targeted. You see, verbal thinking is very top-down. Big, broad concepts, but how do you implement it? I'm a bottom-up thinker. So I picked up something specific like cattle handling to work on. Not just say, well, everything's terrible. Work on something specific where you could actually change it.
You have a quite large body of work, books, academic articles, other kinds of articles. Just to switch gears a little bit, just because you've also made many TV appearances. This documentary is kind of like the latest film about your life. You've had fictional films about your life. That's also a completely different skill set for how to be out there in the world. Have you kind of developed some surprising skills in that way, or has it surprised
I can remember
you?
there used to be 2 things I was terrified of: airplanes, and this is back when I was in my 20s, and public speaking.
Yes.
You know what I learned on public speaking? Have really good slides. And then if you panic, you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And when I'm on my cattle stuff, I had really good slides. I was a good photographer, and I had good slides.
Yes. I was nervous to interview you today, so I have my notes right here that I can keep going back to if I lose my place.
Well, that's what I do when I have to do a talk without slides. I make like a checklist of each bullet point that I'm going to go over.
That's right. We're on the same page there. I wanted to just kind of switch gears a little bit because on the topic of films, I saw that you also are a fan of country western music, and that you like sci-fi films, and that you're a member of the
big
Academy of Arts and Sciences. So
Classic Star Trek, really into that. Spock, Captain Kirk.
all of that. Have you seen? Well, because I saw that you were a member of the Academy of Arts and Sciences and you're an Oscar voter, I wondered if you had any favorite movies that you've
Well, I
seen
remember being
recently.
fascinated by the movie Space Odyssey.
Oh,
and Hal the
wow.
computer. Yeah,
That's a good one.
yep, that's right. Now with AI coming in, well, he was instructed to never lie, and he couldn't tell the astronauts the purpose of the mission. He wasn't given Asimov's rules of robotics that you never ever harm human beings.
So that's like your all-time favorite?
Yeah, that was 1968, and then I was watching Star Trek at the time too, and that was my favorite show. I loved Mr. Spock's logic.
That makes sense. Well, our time is kind of running short, and I know that we've covered a breadth of topics, but is there anything
Well, the
that you'd like
movie
to add?
really concentrates on work that I've done in teaching. I had a chance to go back to my childhood home. That was really interesting to see that. And the field where I used to fly kites now has houses built all over it, which I didn't really enjoy seeing that. Because I had lots of good times playing out in fields. You know, in the 50s, kids just went out and played outside, and we made up our own games. And I just go out, fly my kite on the hill across the street, and not going to do that now.
Do you get to fly your kite where you live now?
There's the very nice field right behind where I live, and I never see any kids playing on it. Now, as a child, kids were just outside playing all the time.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of houses right near where I live, and they got a really nice fenced playground. Almost never see kids on it. They're all in on the devices. No, we need to be getting them out doing things.
Is that what you would say to parents?
Yeah,
Get your kids
I'm
out
not.
there?
I would never recommend banning devices. No, you never would do that. How about an hour a day, week, 2 hours on the weekend for TV? That was the rules I had. Then it was go outside and do stuff.
I think that's a great note to add on. Go outside and do stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Grandin. I really, really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.